My best friend and maid of honor accidentally destroyed my custom wedding dress an hour before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. Her tearful performance was almost convincing. She thought she'd won, but I just smiled and told her I had a backup, a trap 2 months in the making. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The scent of disaster is surprisingly sweet. It smelled like a Tuscan vineyard, mingling with the cloying aroma of hairspray and panicked perfume. An hour before my wedding, the bridal suite, once a sanctuary of excited whispers and joyful chaos, had fallen into a tomb-like silence. The only sound was a soft, rhythmic dripping. Drip, drip, drip. Red wine, the color of blood, bled from the bodice of my wedding dress, pooling onto the pristine white sheet that had been laid out to protect it. My dress, a custom-made silk masterpiece that had taken a year of consultations and fittings to perfect, was ruined. It wasn't just stained, it was saturated, a brutal crimson slash against the delicate ivory. My dream, meticulously designed and lovingly crafted, was now a casualty, hanging limply on its satin hanger like a fallen soldier. And in the center of the room stood Chloe, my best friend since kindergarten, my maid of honor. Her hands flew to her mouth, her blue eyes wide with a theatrical horror that was just a little too perfect. A half-empty bottle of expensive Merlot lay on its side at her feet, the culprit in this perfectly timed tragedy. "Oh, Addison, no," she gasped, her voice trembling. Tears, real or fabricated, welled instantly. "I can't believe it. I was just reaching for my clutch and my hand it just slipped. I am so clumsy. Oh, Addie, I've ruined everything." She collapsed into a nearby armchair, her sobs racking her perfectly tailored bridesmaid dress. My mother and my other bridesmaids rushed forward, a flurry of frantic energy. There were gasps, cries of "what do we do?" and a panicked search for club soda and salt, useless, futile gestures against a stain so deep and devastating. I, however, remained perfectly still. I looked from Chloe's heaving shoulders to the desecrated gown. My heart should have been hammering against my ribs. I should have been screaming, crying, or dissolving into a puddle of bridal despair. But I felt a strange, unnerving calm settle over me, a quiet hum of energy where panic should have been. I watched the scene unfold as if from a great distance, an architect observing a structure's calculated demolition. My mother rushed to my side, her face pale with worry. "Addison, honey, don't just stand there. We have to do something. Maybe we can hide it with the bouquet." I slowly shook my head, my gaze finally landing on Chloe. She peered up at me through her tear-spiked lashes, a flicker of something, triumph, anticipation, in her eyes before it was masked by another wave of performative grief. She was waiting for me to break. She was expecting a meltdown of epic proportions, the dramatic climax to her carefully staged act of sabotage. I offered her a small, serene smile. "It's okay, Chloe," I said, my voice even and clear, cutting through the panicked chatter in the room. "Don't worry about it, it's just a dress." A confused silence fell. Everyone stared at me as if I'd just started speaking in a foreign language. Chloe's sobbing hitched, her brow furrowing in genuine surprise. This was not the reaction she had planned for. I turned to my mother, patting her hand reassuringly. "Mom, it's all right, honestly, I have a backup." The relief in the room was palpable, but it was mixed with utter confusion. A backup? I had never mentioned a backup. I had obsessed over this one dress for a year. The existence of a second one was inconceivable. But as I held Chloe's shocked gaze, I knew this was more than just a backup plan. It was a checkmate, because the betrayal wasn't the wine on the dress. The betrayal was 20 years of a friendship I had just realized was a lie, and the beautiful, pristine gown waiting in the next room was not just my salvation, it was my retribution. The immediate aftermath of the accident was a masterclass in manipulation. Chloe, recovering from the shock of my calm demeanor, doubled down on her role as the devastated friend. She fluttered around me, dabbing at my arms with a tissue as if I were the one in tears, her voice a constant, syrupy murmur of apologies. "Addie, I'll never forgive myself. Never. Your perfect day, and I'm the worst friend in the history of the world." She looked at the other bridesmaids, her eyes pleading for their sympathy, casting herself as the tragic, clumsy sidekick who had inadvertently wounded the heroine. My other bridesmaids, sweet, loyal girls I'd known since college, bought the performance hook, line, and sinker. They patted Chloe's back, telling her, "It's not your fault," and "accidents happen." They looked at me with awe, whispering about how composed I was, how I was handling this incredible crisis with so much grace. They mistook my silence for shock, my stillness for strength. They didn't understand that my composure wasn't grace, it was certainty. While they saw a disaster, I saw the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. I excused myself to the adjoining suite, telling everyone I needed a moment alone to change into my backup dress. Chloe's eyes followed me, a storm of emotions swirling within them, confusion, suspicion, and a sliver of fear. The destruction of my dress was supposed to be the main event. My having a contingency plan, an ace up my sleeve, was an unexpected plot twist that threatened to derail her entire narrative. Inside the quiet of the second room, I took a deep, steadying breath. The adrenaline was beginning to course through me now, not of panic, but of vindication. I walked over to the closet, where a second, far more precious garment bag hung, pristine and untouched. For a moment, I just stared at it, a silent testament to a decision I'd made 2 months ago. My phone buzzed on the vanity. It was a text from Daniel, my soon-to-be husband. "Everything okay? Your mom just sent a cryptic text. Heard there was a dress emergency." I smiled, a genuine, warm smile for the first time that day. Daniel, my rock, the steady, brilliant surgeon who saw the world in terms of solutions, not problems. I texted back, "Everything is under control. Better than okay, actually. The emergency was expected. The solution is going to be unforgettable. I love you. See you at the altar." His reply was instantaneous. "I love you more. Wouldn't expect anything less from my brilliant architect. I'll be the one waiting at the end of the aisle, trying not to pass out from how beautiful you'll look." His unwavering faith in me was the foundation upon which I'd built this new, stronger version of myself. He knew Chloe's friendship had been challenging. Dee witnessed her subtle digs and backhanded compliments for years, though I had always defended her, blinded by the loyalty of a shared history. "She's just competitive," I used to say. "It's how she shows she cares." Daniel would just raise an eyebrow. "An architect knows a flawed foundation when she sees one, Addison. You just have to be willing to look at the blueprints." He was right. I had been ignoring the blueprints for years, but I wasn't ignoring them anymore. I had finally examined the cracks in the foundation of my friendship with Chloe, and I had prepared for the inevitable collapse. I had designed a safety net, and that safety net was hanging in the bag in front of me. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My hair and makeup were flawless, an untouched canvas. My eyes were clear and bright. I did not look like a bride whose dream had just been shattered. I looked like a woman on the verge of victory. Chloe thought my greatest strength was my kindness, my willingness to forgive, my talent for smoothing over her sharp edges. She thought my love for her was unconditional. It was a mistake many people had made when looking at my life from the outside. But she had forgotten one crucial thing about me. She had forgotten that an architect never, ever builds something important without a contingency plan. Chloe and I grew up in houses that shared a backyard fence. Our friendship was forged in the humid summers of childhood, over shared secrets whispered from treehouses and scraped knees patched with matching cartoon bandages. For 20 years, she wasn't just my best friend. She was an extension of myself, the sister I never had. Our lives were intertwined, our milestones celebrated in tandem. But as we grew older, a subtle fissure began to form, an almost invisible crack in the foundation of our bond. It started in high school. When I was named valedictorian, Chloe, who had barely passed her calculus class, threw me a surprise party. But during her toast, She joked that I must have a photographic memory because I certainly didn't get it from being a social butterfly. It was a backhanded compliment wrapped in a celebratory bow, making my academic success seem like a product of social inadequacy. I laughed it off, because that's what you did for Chloe. When I was accepted into a prestigious architecture program, she gushed about how proud she was. A week later, she announced she was dropping her business major to become an event planner, declaring that she was more of a people person and couldn't imagine being stuck behind a drafting table all day. Every success of mine was met with a corresponding move of hers, a subtle reframing of her own choices to make them seem more vibrant, more exciting, more alive than my own quiet, focused path. Her profession as an event planner was, to put it mildly, why an exaggeration? In reality, she assisted a senior planner at a mid-range hotel, mostly coordinating corporate luncheons and the occasional Sweet 16 party. Yet, on her social media and in conversations, she was a visionary, a curator of bespoke experiences. She talked about weddings constantly, critiquing other people's choices with the sharp eye of a seasoned expert. Her own future wedding was a fantasy she had been constructing for years, a Pinterest board of impossible perfection. When I met Daniel, Chloe's jealousy, once a subtle undercurrent, became a palpable force. Daniel was everything she claimed she wanted in a partner: successful, handsome, and utterly devoted. When he proposed to me on a trip to Italy, in a quiet olive grove under the Tuscan sun, Chloe's reaction was telling. "Oh, Addie, I'm so thrilled for you," she'd squealed over the phone. But a beat later, she added, "A bit cliché, the whole Italy thing, isn't it? When I get engaged, I want something unique. Something that hasn't been done 1,000 times." Throughout the wedding planning, her help was a Trojan horse, filled with undermining suggestions and passive-aggressive remarks. She'd look at my venue choice, a beautiful historic art museum, and say, "It's lovely. A little stuffy, maybe, but you've always been more traditional." She'd critique my floral arrangements, my color palette, my choice of caterer, always with a sweet smile, always phrasing it as if she were just trying to help me see a more fun or modern perspective. It was a slow, steady campaign to plant seeds of doubt, to chip away at my happiness. The centerpiece of her own wedding fantasy was the dress. About 6 months before my wedding, she had discovered a niche French couturier, Madame Dubois. Madame Dubois was an artist, a legend in the fashion world who created only a handful of gowns a year, each a unique, one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Chloe became obsessed with one design in particular she'd seen featured in a high-fashion magazine. It was called L'Étoile Filante, the shooting star. It was an ethereal creation of layered tulle and hand-stitched silver embroidery that mimicked a celestial cascade. It was breathtaking, a true work of art. Chloe printed out photos of it. She made it the background on her phone. She talked about it incessantly, telling everyone it was her dress. "I've already started saving," she'd announce at brunch with our friends. "I'm going to fly to Paris, have a private consultation with Madame Dubois, and it will be mine. It's the only dress in the world I would ever consider." She was an event planner assistant making a modest salary. The gown cost more than her car. The idea of her affording it was ludicrous, but it was part of the grand illusion she was building, the fantasy life she curated for her audience. She wasn't just planning to wear a dress, she was planning to become the kind of woman who wore that dress. And in her mind, that woman wasn't me. It couldn't be me. My success was a direct threat to her fantasy. If I had it all, the career, the man, the perfect wedding, what was left for her to strive for? Her envy had finally curdled into something far more toxic. She didn't just want to have what I had, she needed me not to have it. Destroying my dress wasn't just about the dress itself. It was about proving that my meticulously planned life could be upended by a single, clumsy accident. It was about shattering my composure and asserting her power in the most destructive way possible. She wanted to be the star of my tragedy, the one who could say, "Poor Addison. Her perfect day was ruined." If only she'd been a little less focused on perfection, maybe she could have seen it coming. The turning point, the moment I shifted from a passive friend into an active strategist, came 3 months before the wedding. We were at a bridal boutique for a final fitting of the bridesmaid dresses. I was in my own gown, standing on the pedestal, watching my reflection with a quiet sense of joy. It was perfect. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Chloe stood beside me, adjusting the strap of her own dress. She caught my eye in the mirror and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You look beautiful, Addie," she said. Then she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's a shame the back is so simple. A dress like this really needs a dramatic back, like El Idol Falante. Now that's a gown that makes an exit." It was a small comment, a tiny pinprick in a moment of happiness, but it was the one that finally pierced my denial. For years, I had made excuses for her. She's insecure. She's had a tough time. She doesn't mean it. But standing there in the dress I was going to marry the love of my life in, I finally saw her jealousy for what it was, a corrosive acid that was slowly eating away at the foundations of our friendship. It wasn't just about the dress. It was about her need to diminish my Joe. Why to amplify her own sense of worth? That night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I thought about Daniel's words about looking at the blueprints, so I did. I opened my laptop and started digging. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just patterns. I scrolled through years of her social media posts, our text exchanges, old emails, and the pattern was undeniable. Every achievement I shared was immediately followed by a post from her about a bigger, better, more exciting version of the same thing that was just around the corner for her. Every moment of my happiness was a trigger for her to escalate her own fantasies. And her obsession with the Dubois gown was reaching a fever pitch. She had started referring to it as if the purchase were a done deal, telling mutual friends that she had a consultation scheduled for the following year. An idea began to form in my mind, a wild, audacious plan that was equal parts defensive and offensive. It was a contingency plan born of deep hurt, a strategy to protect my own wedding day while simultaneously creating an inescapable trap for the saboteur I now knew was living in my inner circle. The next morning, I booked a last-minute flight to Paris under the guise of a sourcing trip for a new client project. I didn't tell anyone except Daniel. I used a private email address to contact Madame Dubois' atelier, introducing myself as an architect with a deep appreciation for her work and expressing my interest in one of her creations. To my surprise, her personal assistant replied within hours, granting me an appointment. 2 days later, I was walking through a discreet, unmarked door in the heart of Le Marais. The atelier was a world of quiet, focused artistry. Bolts of silk and lace lined the walls, and sketches of ethereal gowns were pinned to corkboards. Madame Dubois herself was a petite, formidable woman with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. She listened patiently as I explained my situation, though I left out the more sordid details of jealousy and potential sabotage. I simply said that I was a bride looking for a second, secret dress, a piece of art that would be a complete surprise. "I understand the need for secrets," she said, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "They are often more powerful than grand declarations." I showed her the picture Chloe was so fond of. "This one," I said, "El Idol Falante." Her eyes lit up. "Ah, oui, a personal favorite. It requires a woman of great confidence to wear it. It does not hide, it announces." She studied me for a long moment. "You have the posture for it, the strength." She confirmed it was a one-of-a-kind piece. Once sold, it would never be replicated. I asked about the price. It was astronomical, but I was prepared. My career as an architect, specializing in high-end sustainable design, had been very successful. I had my own savings, a separate account Daniel didn't even know about that I used for investments and personal passions. This, I decided, was a worthy investment. "I will take it," I said, my voice steady. "But there are 2 conditions. First, I must pay in cash. I want no credit card statements, no paper trail. Second, all communication must be through my private email. No one can know." Madame Dubois nodded, her expression one of intrigued respect. She understood the world of high stakes and discretion. She drew up a private bill of sale and, most importantly, a certificate of authenticity, hand-signed and embossed with her personal seal. It was an ironclad document proving this gown was the one and only original. I flew home the next day with the dress carefully packed in an anonymous garment bag. I stored it in the back of my office closet, a secret hiding in plain sight. For the next 2 months, I played the part of the happy, oblivious bride. I listened to Chloe talk about her dress, nodding and smiling, all the while knowing it was hanging just a few miles away, waiting for its moment. I wasn't just planning a wedding anymore. I was orchestrating a reveal. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the mouse to take the bait. Back in the present, I closed the door to the adjoining suite, shutting out the buzz of nervous energy. The heavy silence was a balm. I sent the text to Daniel, and his reply solidified my resolve. I was not a victim in this story. I was the author of its final chapter. After a few minutes of quiet contemplation, I opened the door and stepped back into the main bridal suite. The room fell silent again, all eyes on me. Chloe was on her feet now, her face a carefully composed mask of concern. "Addie, are you okay?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Should I call Daniel? We can postpone. Everyone will understand." Postpone? That was her endgame. Not just a stained dress, but a canceled wedding. A public failure. She wanted to see my perfect day crumble into ashes so she could be the one to comfort me in the ruins. "Postpone? Don't be silly," I said, my tone light and breezy. "We're perfectly on schedule." I turned to my other 3 bridesmaids who were huddled together looking lost. "Girls, would you mind giving Chloe and me a moment alone, please? And Sarah," I added, looking at my oldest friend from college, "could you do me a huge favor? In my office closet at the very back, there's a plain black garment bag. Could you have my assistant bring it here right away? Tell her it's the Dubois file. She'll know." Sarah nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and confusion, and quickly ushered the other 2 out of the room. The door clicked shut, leaving just Chloe and me. The air crackled with unspoken tension. "The Dubois file?" Chloe asked, her voice suddenly losing its tearful tremor, her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Oh, it's nothing," I said, walking over to the vanity and pretending to check my makeup. "Just a little contingency I put in place. As an architect, I believe in redundancy." This was the first reveal. Not a dramatic accusation, but a simple, strategic statement that I was prepared. I saw her reflection in the mirror. Her jaw was tight. The mask was beginning to slip. The clumsy friend was gone, replaced by a wary adversary. "A contingency," she repeated, forcing a laugh that sounded like cracking glass. "Addie, you are unbelievable. Who has a contingency wedding dress? You loved that gown more than anything." "I did," I agreed, turning to face her. "I absolutely did, which is why it's so strange that you, my best friend, would be so careless with a bottle of red wine right next to it." Her face paled. "It was an accident," she insisted, her voice rising. "How can you even suggest?" "I'm not suggesting anything," I said calmly, holding up a hand. "I'm just observing. It was an unfortunate accident. But lucky for me, it's not a disaster. It's just an inconvenience." I smiled again, a bright, unwavering smile. "It's a good thing I brought a backup." Chloe stared at me, her mind clearly racing. She was trying to assess the damage, not to the dress, but to her plan. A backup dress. What could it be? Something off the rack? Something borrowed? Whatever it was, it couldn't possibly compare to the custom masterpiece she had just destroyed. In her mind, she had still one. I might make it to the altar, but I would be a diminished version of the bride I was supposed to be. Her victory was tarnished, but it was still a victory. There was a soft knock on the door. Sarah peeked her head in. "The bag is here," she whispered. "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "Bring it in." Sarah entered, carrying a long, plain black garment bag. It was unmarked, with no logo, no designer name. It was utterly anonymous. She hung it on a hook on the back of the door and, sensing the tension, quietly excused herself. Chloe eyed the bag with a dismissive curiosity. Her confidence was returning. This plain, boring bag couldn't possibly hold anything of value. "Well, thank goodness for that," she said, her voice reverting to its sympathetic tone. "I can't wait to see it. I'm sure you'll look beautiful in whatever it is. I walked over to the bag, my hand resting on the zipper. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. "Oh, I think you're right," I said. "I think I will look beautiful. In fact, I have a feeling you're going to think this dress is absolutely perfect." The atmosphere in the room was thick enough to be measured in pounds per square inch. Chloe stood with her arms crossed, a smug, pitying smile fixed on her face. She thought she was seconds away from seeing some sad, off-the-rack replacement dress. She thought she was about to witness my defeat. I let the silence stretch, my hand remaining on the zipper. I wanted her to savor this moment, this last peak of her imagined triumph, before the ground fell away from beneath her feet. "You know, it's funny," I began, my voice conversational, as if we were just chatting over coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about our friendship lately, about all the little moments." Chloe's smile tightened. "Addie, now is hardly the time for a trip down memory lane. You need to get dressed." "No, this is the perfect time," I countered, my voice hardening ever so slightly. "For instance, I was thinking about that time in college when I was studying for my final architecture exam. Remember? You accidentally reformatted my hard drive while trying to download a movie. You were so apologetic then, too. I had to pull 3 all-nighters to redo my entire portfolio." Her face flickered. "That was a genuine mistake. I felt terrible about that." "I'm sure you did," I said, my tone flat. "And remember last year, at Daniel's birthday party? You pulled him aside to tell him you were worried about me, that I was working too hard and was still secretly heartbroken over my ex-boyfriend, Mark." Chloe's jaw dropped. "I was just concerned, as a friend." "Concerned, over why?" "Oh, trying to plant a seed of doubt in my new, happy relationship. The relationship you told me was moving too fast." I took a step toward her. "And what about all those little comments during the wedding planning? The venue was stuffy. The flowers were dated. My custom-designed dress had a simple back. You weren't helping, Chloe. You were undermining. Every step of the way, you have tried to chip away at my happiness." Each accusation was a carefully placed stone, building a wall of evidence between us. Her performance was crumbling, her mask cracking under the weight of her own history. The fake tears and apologies were gone, replaced by a defensive glare. "You're being paranoid," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You're stressed out, and you're looking for someone to blame for a simple, clumsy accident." "Am I?" I asked softly. I turned back to the garment bag. "This isn't about paranoia, Chloe. This is about patterns. And your pattern is an obsession with having the best, even if it means destroying what other people have. Especially me." My fingers tightened on the zipper. "You've talked for months about your dream wedding dress. The one-of-a-kind masterpiece. L'Edel Falante by Madame Dubois." At the mention of the name, a visible tremor went through her. Her eyes, wide with shock, darted from my face to the plain black bag. A horrifying realization began to dawn on her. It couldn't be. It was impossible. "You told everyone it was going to be yours," I continued, my voice now cold and precise. "You told them you had a consultation, that you were saving up. You built an entire fantasy around that dress. A fantasy of a life you thought you deserved more than me." I looked her directly in the eye, and for the first time, she didn't look away. She saw no weakness in me now, no trace of the forgiving friend she had taken for granted for so long. She saw an architect who had reviewed the blueprints of their friendship and found them to be fatally flawed. "You thought destroying my dress today would bring you one step closer to that fantasy," I said. "You thought you would ruin my moment, and in doing so, clear the path for your own. But you made one critical miscalculation." With a single, fluid motion, I pulled down the zipper. The bag fell open. And inside, shimmering under the soft lights of the bridal suite, was L'Edel Falante. The shooting star. It was even more beautiful in person than in the photographs. Layers of the finest, palest silver tulle cascaded to the floor, and thousands of hand-stitched crystals and threads of silver embroidery glittered like a captured galaxy. It was a celestial event rendered in silk and light. It was Chloe's dream, and it was my irrefutable proof. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking all the air and sound from the room. Chloe's face, which had been a storm of defensive anger, went utterly blank. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving behind a waxy, sickly pallor. Her eyes were fixed on the dress, wide with a horror so profound it seemed to have paralyzed her. Her carefully constructed world, the fantasy she had so painstakingly built, had just been vaporized before her very eyes. "No," she whispered, the word a faint, broken puff of air. It can't be." "Oh, but it is," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand. I reached into a side pocket of the garment bag and pulled out a small, elegant vellum envelope sealed with a wax stamp. "You see, you thought this was just a fantasy on a Pinterest board, a dream for some distant future, but I deal in reality. I build things, and sometimes I buy things." I broke the seal and slid out the contents, a heavy, cream-colored card. I held it up for her to see. It was the certificate of authenticity, signed in flowing, elegant script by Madame Dubois herself, declaring this gown to be the one and only original of its design. "It's a copy," Chloe stammered, shaking her head in frantic denial. "A fake. You had it copied." The accusation was weak, desperate. She knew, as well as I did, that a work of art like this could not be faked. "Does this look fake to you, Chloe?" I asked, holding the certificate closer. "I flew to Paris 2 months ago. I met with Madame Dubois in her private atelier. I paid in cash so there would be no record. I bought your dream, and I've been keeping it as my own little secret. My backup plan. My insurance policy against the friend I knew I could no longer trust." Her composure finally, irrevocably shattered. Her face crumpled, not with the performative grief of before, but with the raw, ugly agony of being exposed. This was not just about a dress. It was about her entire identity, the carefully curated image of the girl who was destined for better things, being stripped away to reveal the petty, jealous creature underneath. "Why?" she choked out, her voice ragged with a mixture of rage and despair. "Why would you do this to me?" I let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. "To you? You stand there, next to the ruins of a dress that represented a year of my joy and planning, a dress you destroyed, and you ask why I would do this to you." My voice rose, filled with the righteous anger I had suppressed for so long. "You did this to yourself, Chloe. This is the consequence of your own actions. For years, I have watched you try to dim my light so yours could shine brighter. I excused it, I forgave it, and I enabled it. But I am getting married today. I am starting a new life with a man I love, a life built on honesty and trust. And there is no room in that life for a friend who would try to ruin my happiness for her own satisfaction." The door creaked open, and my bridesmaids, drawn by the raised voices, peeked in. They saw the ruined dress on one side of the room, the magnificent, glittering gown on the other, and the two of us facing off like gladiators in the center. The truth of the situation dawned on their faces in a wave of collective shock and dawning horror. I ignored them, my eyes locked on Chloe. "So now you have a choice," I said, my voice dropping back to a lethal calm. "You can either pull yourself together, put on a smile, and walk down that aisle as my maid of honor, pretending for the next 6 hours that you are the devoted best friend everyone believes you to be. You can watch me marry the love of my life in the dress you thought would be yours. Or you can walk out that door right now and never speak to me again." I turned my back on her, a final act of dismissal, and began to step into my real wedding dress. "The ceremony starts in 30 minutes, I said over my shoulder. "Decide." For a long moment, she didn't move. I could feel the weight of her stare on my back, a toxic cocktail of hatred, humiliation, and disbelief. Then, with a choked sob, she turned and fled the room. The choice had been made. A hush fell over the bridal suite in Chloe's wake. My bridesmaids stared at the empty doorway, then at me, their expressions a mixture of awe and pity. Sarah was the first to move. She came forward and gently helped me with the delicate buttons on the back of the gown. "I had no idea, Addison," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry." I met her eyes in the mirror and gave her a small, grateful smile. "Don't be, I'm not." And it was the truth. A profound, cleansing sense of relief was washing over me, purging the last remnants of a toxic friendship that had weighed me down for years. I felt lighter, freer. There was no time for lengthy explanations. My father knocked on the door, his voice gentle. "Addie, it's time." When I stepped out to meet him, his jaw dropped. He had seen my first dress, but this was something else entirely. "My dear," he breathed, his eyes shining, "you look like a queen." Walking down the aisle was an out-of-body experience. The museum's grand hall was filled with the soft strains of a string quartet, and every face was turned toward me. But I only saw one: Daniel. He was standing at the altar, looking at me with an expression of such profound love and adoration that it took my breath away. As I drew closer, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes as he took in the dress, followed by a slow, knowing smile. He understood. He saw not just a beautiful gown, but a victory. To my shock, Chloe was there, standing in the maid of honor's spot. She had chosen the first option. She had chosen to endure the humiliation. Her face was a pale, tight mask of composure. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was smiling, a ghastly, brittle smile that didn't reach her vacant eyes. She was trapped, forced to bear witness to the triumph she had so desperately tried to prevent. Watching her stand there, a ghost at the feast, was a far more fitting consequence than her simply running away. The ceremony was beautiful. Our vows were heartfelt and real, promises of a future built on the solid ground of mutual respect and unwavering support. When Daniel kissed me, the applause that erupted felt like a validation of everything that had just happened. We were married, we were happy, and I was free. Chloe performed her duties at the reception with the robotic precision of an automaton. She gave a toast, her voice trembling as she read from a pre-written card filled with hollow platitudes about lifelong friendship and cherished memories. It was a painful, awkward performance, and I could feel the pitying eyes of our guests upon her. The truth was spreading through the room in hushed whispers, passed from bridesmaid to cousin to friend. Her public facade was disintegrating in real time. After the toast, I found her near the coat check, ready to flee. "Chloe," I said, stopping her. She flinched, refusing to meet my eyes. "I did what you said," she muttered. "I stayed. Can I go now?" "Yes," I said, "you can go, but I want to be clear. This is goodbye, not just for today. But for good, our friendship is over." She finally looked at me, her eyes shimmering with a fresh wave of tears. But this time, they weren't for show. They were real tears of loss, of a self-inflicted wound so deep it could never be healed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said, and perhaps she was, but it didn't matter anymore. "Goodbye, Chloe." I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving her to disappear into the night and out of my life forever. 2 days later, Daniel and I were on a plane to the Maldives. As we soared above the clouds, I felt the last vestiges of the drama fall away. The anger was gone, replaced by a serene sense of peace. The betrayal had hurt, but it had also been a catalyst, forcing me to demolish a part of my life that was structurally unsound to make way for something new and infinitely stronger. Daniel took my hand. "So, the Dubois gown," he said, a playful glint in his eye. "Are you going to keep it?" I thought for a moment, picturing the glittering dress. It was a symbol of betrayal and retribution, a masterpiece born of pain. But it was also the gown I had worn to marry the love of my life. "I am," I said, smiling. "It's a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful structures are the ones with the most interesting stories behind their foundations." And my foundation, with him, was solid as rock.